Welcome to Deep Look, Ulti World's weekly show about everything going on in Ultimate. I am this week's host, Keith Rayner, often co-host. And after last week's Atlanta slander, for those who joined us, I am now joined by Athens-based reporter Edward Stevens, senior editor, friend of the show, and another passionate supporter of Atlanta sports. Edward, this man, Charlie Eisenhood, was out here trying to bring up our darkest moments in Atlanta history. He doesn't know about the heroes who've come out of this city. You know, your Henry Aarons, your Tom Glavins, your Dominique Wilkins. He doesn't know.
Andrew Jones. Here's a throwback for you. Morton Anderson, the better field goal kicking Anderson of the 1998 NFC Championship game with the Vikings?
A legend. I mean, Andre Rison, Peerless Price. He doesn't know about Peerless Price. Come on, man. Okay. I love Atlanta sports. I love my city, but tough L for Atlanta last week. We're gonna get more into that when we talk about the UFA championship weekend lineup that we've got coming up after a pretty exciting divisional championship weekend with some surprise upsets. Yes, that means I do have to pay out to Charlie. We'll also be talking about a little bit about WUC this week, as well as the Elite Select Challenge coming up. So plenty to talk about on this week's show. I'm glad to have Edward here to join me for it. And gotta make sure as we get into the nitty gritty. I mean, there's so much Ultimate going on. If you're excited to hear about what's going on, make sure you like and subscribe. Hit us with a thumbs up. Tell people something nice. Poke around in the chat. Appreciate Rohan, the first up in the chat, and also shouting out the deep cuts that we're pulling out of Atlanta sports history. Before we get into all the Ultimate that we have to talk about, I believe we're going to kick it off with a nice little trivia question of the week for our guest here.
What do you got for me, Keith?
All right, folks. Well, we're back with Guess the Player. Everybody's new favorite, Guess the Player. So, Edward, you'll be on the hot seat along with the chat to see if you can come up with the player in as few hints as possible, I guess, is how we'll frame it. So, for this week's Guess the Player, here's your starting hints. Okay, so this player has competed at the club championships in each of the past 4 seasons. During their time competing at nationals, which may span past that 4 seasons, they've competed with 2 different teams. And this player also is a Western Ultimate League awards finalist.
All right, is that my first round of clues complete?
Yeah, that's your 3 hints. So you got Western Ultimate League awards finalist. He's played at club nationals with 2 different teams and has been competing at the club championships in each of the past 4 years.
I am really not up to date on who were up there in the awards talk, but each of the past 4 years, at least 2 different club teams. I have a guess. How about Kayla Helton?
That's what we're here for. Kayla Helton. That's a good guess. It is not Kayla Helton. But I'll give you some more hints. At least. There's an Ari Nelson guess in the chat. It is possible for a player to have met the criteria that I've laid out thus far, but not be the pick. There's also a guess for Dina. So we've got see the Western Ultimate League poll for people. So here's another hint for you. This person won 2 Western Ultimate League championships. That probably tells you which team they were on. I guess they could switch. It's
probably
teams,
Seattle.
I don't think there's anybody who was on Seattle who then was on Colorado this year.
I am going to say, wow, who was on both Mixtape and Riot? I think that's the kind of player I'm looking for here. Was it Hannah Kawhi?
Hannah Kawhi is the guest. It is not Hannah Kawhi. We've got a guest for Aubrey Dietrich in the chat. Not Aubrey Dietrich yet either. So I'll give you folks another hint. We have this person who was on the mixed breakout player of the year podium at one point in their career.
At one point.
I can give you the year if you want, but that might make it a little easier. We'll say this person was on the 2021 mixed breakout player of the year podium.
Okay, that makes me think it's a BFG player. And I'm so stumped, Keith. I voted on that.
The chat has got it. The chat has got it. So shout out to Keegan Miller, who's guest Cheryl Sue. That is our answer. Cheryl Sue is this week's guest the player. Club championships in each of the past 4 years with BFG. Previously had attended the club championships with Polar Bears back in 2018, as well as was a Western Ultimate League O-Pody finalist this year, and was the 2021 Club Mixed Breakout Player of the Year, and won 2 titles with Seattle. So Cheryl Sue is your guest player this week. It was a nice try. That was I think that's probably our toughest one yet. But obviously it depends on where your spheres of knowledge are going to be. But good try, Edward. We appreciate you on the show to compete. We'll never know. No one will ever know between those two things which one it is. So that is this week's guest the player. And now we get to move on to talk about these wild postseason events over in the Ultimate Frisbee Association. Couple upsets, and we are going to be joined by a special guest, our own Alex Rubin, who is our UFA beat reporter. Been a long time on the UFA beat, as well as our resident jersey grader. So a lot of hats to wear. But Alex, great to have you on the show. Talk about what was a pretty wild set of games that we just had this past weekend in the UFA.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's great to be here.
Last week I had polled our Discord, which was the most likely upset. They chose Carolina by a pretty wide margin. Which of the two upsets was the bigger surprise to you? Carolina over Atlanta or Seattle over Salt Lake?
Seattle's got to be the bigger surprise. I mean, going into Salt Lake, a place they've only ever lost before. I mean, I've been saying this is how we know that the UFA isn't rigged. I feel like this was destined for Salt Lake. They're hosting championship weekend. They've been like one of the strongest teams in the West since their inception. They had their kind of you have to lose before you win moment last season. It felt like they were really on a good track. New York's out of the way. So I think everyone really expected Salt Lake to go through, and for Seattle to come in there and really take a deserved win, I thought was really impressive, but also really surprising.
Alex, what was it about this Seattle team that, even though they were kind of playing behind the leaderboard in the West all year long, kind of allowed them to create enough opportunities to break Utah and take the game?
Yeah, I mean, something that's impressed me about Seattle this season is really their sense of like collective buy-in. It sounds like it started that last year. I know their record last year maybe didn't indicate it. But I think this is the first year since they last made championship weekend back in 2016, I think it was, that Seattle really had all of their top players playing most of their games. And that, lets them experiment a little bit more, right? When they're not putting together lineups on the fly. They can really hone into who's like really good at what and how they can kind of make their team function based on those skill sets. So I was really impressed actually that Seattle was able to put a lot of their better players on defense. It's not typically how ultimate teams are designed, but they were able to create an offensive system and structure that worked for them without Khalif El Salam, without Lucas Ambrose. And I think those two players in particular made a lot of really impressive defensive plays. Certainly in the third quarter, they each had some blocks. I think Khalif had 2 and Lucas had 1 that turned the tide and gave Seattle the lead for good. But I really think it was more than any one particular play. Their ability to buy in and compete together as a team, right? In the UFA, there's a lot of competing priorities between club and worlds and other different things that people are doing that I think a lot of the times pro is kind of thrown off to the side as this extra thing people are doing. But when teams really buy in and commit and are able to compete with that as their priority, you get a result like this.
And to me, it felt a little bit like Salt Lake kind of cracked under the pressure. I mean, you'd think maybe playing at home, maybe championship weekend coming up, that maybe they could get rid of some of that. They have championship weekend experience. They've played in a lot of big games as what's become a marquee team, and they haven't always put their best foot forward in those games. But you'd think maybe they learned some lessons, but it didn't feel that way watching the game. It felt like they kind of fell apart down the stretch. They did make a little bit of a comeback. They were down to Seattle by like 3 late. It was like 19-16 in the fourth quarter. They make a run. They come back, but they have the ball with a little under 30 seconds left, a chance to drive and score the game tying point and send it to overtime. They get it all the way to the red zone, but can't come up with anything. Did you feel like Salt Lake felt like they cracked?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I'd be curious to hear from their players how they felt in that moment. It reminds me a little bit of Truck Stop from a few years ago when they felt like this destined team, and right, they end up Truck Stop lost to Bravo in the final. So like here, they're in front of their home crowd. I wonder also how much that plays into it, right? When you have probably like 1,500 people like expecting a result and not being able to deliver on that is a different kind of pressure than I think a lot of Ultimate players are used to. And yeah, I mean, I felt like, this seems like a classic kind of like look ahead game, right? Where they were already thinking about championship weekend at home. And they had beaten Seattle already this season. Seattle, since Salt Lake has been in the league, Seattle really hasn't been a threat to them. So I think they were caught a little bit off guard by the competitiveness of the game, is my read on it. And once they were kind of in a place that they didn't expect to be in, it was harder for them to recover. And despite all that, like you said, they still had a chance with a few seconds left there, on the goal line at the end of the game, and couldn't complete the pass. So, credit to Seattle for playing good defense in that moment. But sure Will Selfridge would take that hammer back if he had a second chance.
Definitely felt like they were missing Luke Jorgensen a lot as somebody who could kind of steer the ship for the offense. I definitely felt his absence was significant. But big shout out to Spencer Lofink, who kind of took over the center handler role for Seattle, 7 assists and 2 goals. Even though it's kind of a quiet game for like Zeppelin Ronig and Jordan Kerr, these kind of big offensive stars. It was Seattle's other guys who I think stepped up and rose to the occasion, especially on defense when you were talking about players like Ambrose and Khalif El Salam. I want to move to the Atlanta game. That final in Seattle. I'll run down the scores real quick. Seattle gets the 21-20 win, coming down to the wire there. The Atlanta game, which we're about to talk about, Carolina wins 17-16 in Atlanta. Meanwhile, DC defends their home turf. They win 16-14 over Boston, and Minnesota, the one dominant win of the week, they defeat Madison 23-14 at home. But let's go down to Atlanta. Charlie called the choke. He said that this Atlanta team wasn't going to be able to handle it when it mattered the most. And this game inspired a lot of conversation in the Discord. What was your takeaway from how this game ended and what I imagine was really disappointing fashion for the home fans, but a really exciting result for a Carolina team that felt like they've been behind Atlanta all year?
Yeah, I have no issue with the way the game ended. I think that, the clock is something that's different about semi-pro, and burning the clock is a skill that's sort of unique to this side of the game. And just because it's different than the ultimate that many of us grew up playing, doesn't make it bad. I personally enjoyed watching that last possession. Right? I mean, Carolina, nobody scored in the last, I think it was 5 minutes and 44 seconds of the game. There was about a 3-minute possession at the end where Carolina worked it all the way to the goal line and then sort of called off the attack and worked all the way back to their own goal line. And I think it's impressive that they had that ability to communicate with each other. I think Ben Snell really led the charge there. It was him and Elijah Long for a while. And being able to kind of change their offensive pacing in the moment on the fly while the game was happening. And Atlanta couldn't do that on the defensive side. I think, when that point started with over 5 minutes left, I'm not sure if Carolina talked about it beforehand or not, but it wouldn't surprise me if, it's in the back of their head that if they got the ball, they could just hold it for a while, and they know they can do that. That's sort of part of the Carolina style. They've done that before. My guess is Atlanta didn't say anything, beforehand to be ready for the game to end in that moment, and it felt like it came out like much too soon for that group of 7 players that were on the field to really be able to adjust. So for that, I think it's good coaching, good organization, and a deserved win for Carolina there.
Okay, Alex. Okay, Alex. Without anything away from the way Ben Snell and the rest of that line played at the end, without taking away the coaching and the preparation, which were on point based on the rules of the game, I must disrespectfully disagree that that's an okay way for a Frisbee game to end. Are you kidding? I was at that game, and I saw that we had a tight game after the third quarter. I jumped into our Discord then to say, boy, I wish it was something like higher score +5. I can't remember if it was a 1-point game or a tie game heading into the fourth. But it just struck me that we were going to get one of those moments where all you had to do was play keep away and win the game. Lo and behold, that's exactly what ended up transpiring. I cannot think of a more boring situation in an ultimate game than when the offensive team has no motivation to score whatsoever. It's like tremendously stupid. I cannot get behind timed ultimate for that reason. I just wanted to get that out of the way first. That being said, it was a pretty good game up to then. Carolina were clicking. Anders Youngst had a phenomenal game. Alan Laviolette was doing basically what he's done all year long and just moving the disc really, really well. Frankie Fernandez was playing good defense for the hustle. One of the matchups that, because it didn't result in a lot of big plays, that was the most fun to watch live was watching Justin Burnett on Atlanta's defense guard Tobias Brooks on the Carolina Flyers offense. And he basically took away all of Toby Brooks's big play moments. Like we think of Burnett as a block getter, like a highlight reel player, but he wasn't doing that kind of defense. He was showing the grindy defense, and Brooks kind of had to contend with finding a body in his way every time he tried to move. He still got open sometimes. That's offense on a big field for you. But he didn't have the kind of huge game he had last week against the Solar, 2 weeks ago, rather. But yeah, at the end of the day, Atlanta, after cruising out to a lead, started to make bad decisions on offense, started to float throws and not think through where the defense might be in terms of baiting. And yeah, it was a really well-deserved win from Carolina. Bad rule playing by the UFA, excuse me, just like I hate a timed game. But tremendous win for Carolina.
That's fair. Just to stick with the timing thing for a minute. I actually thought the last possession was really exciting, right? There were a few throws that were actually contested, right? And that Atlanta only needs one block, and right, they have their chance. I think that's more exciting than Carolina going up 2, and then they're trying to figure out defensive traps and whatnot, right? With 10 seconds left, Ben Snell floats this high floating flick into his own end zone. Ethan Bloodworth came down with it, but I think that was a viable Callahan opportunity. Christian Olsen was a defender there who came pretty close. And I think those moments are just as exciting as what we think of as standard, typical Ultimate. So I understand the idea that people think Ultimate should end with a goal being scored, but I still think that even a boring possession, for those listening on audio, that was with air quotes, I think that still had a lot of excitement to it. So we'll let that fall where it may.
Well, I'm gonna get my thoughts in too. I got takes. First of all, shout out to Evan Lepler and Adekale Ande, who I think helped make that point feel a little more dramatic, intense at home. For those of us watching on the live stream, there were a couple of dicey moments, but I thought it was clear that Atlanta was unprepared. Also, really punished them for subbing in their O-line. I think Carolina probably could have just gassed them, punched it in, and been like, all right, the game's over. We're up to their O-line is totally fried. It's wraps. Atlanta had the disc. They take the timeout. They bring in the O-line. Bobby Lay, unmarked, just throws a away pass towards the end zone that he undershoots, and they just were not ready for keep away for the duration of the rest of the game. And I think that in this particular circumstance, like, yes, Atlanta's lack of preparedness seemed to keep them from trying any strategies that might have helped force a turnover. I know there was a lot of thoughts in the Discord, like, oh, you should be basically like double teaming, trapping in the backfield, trying to induce a huck. And that's true because the worst case scenario is that they score quickly and at least you get the ball back. But I think that all of that's the case. But I think even if you give teams a chance to like strategically adjust to this, there's a way in which this gets really uninteresting quickly, especially if you start to see it at greater than a goal difference of one. If a team's up 3 or 4 going into the fourth quarter and they just do this the whole fourth quarter, even if they get scored on, they're probably going to win. It's just not. I think that's not compelling. That would be my concern. Is if the rest of the league starts to like, our teams start to take this to a further extreme to see if they can push the envelope and just be like, we're fine giving up a couple of late goals as long as we're really markedly decreasing our opponent's opportunity to win. There just really is no comeback mechanism. That's true in club and UFA Ultimate. There's not really a good way for teams to come back. But that's where we're at. I don't fault the Flyers in any way, and I don't really think I've seen people doing that. But I do think that the league may think about some ways that they can mitigate this that aren't too wildly out of bounds or complicated. I think the most popular examples are shot clock or backcourt, basically like a line you can't go back across once you've passed midfield, for example. But yeah, I think that possession in particular actually turned out to be pretty tense. But the more tired the Atlanta got, the less likely it felt like they were going to get a block, and the more the game slowed down into just being like kind of like some guys jogging around after the disc. That was a tough. Our producer Lindsay Sue makes it 2-2. She's with Alex, so is into the stall tactic, a little keep away, especially on the big field. It's so hard on the defense. But to me, beyond that story, which I do think is a key story. I mean, narrative all you want about the history of Atlanta sports, but this is the second straight year that Atlanta has the hustle have gone out and felt like they lost a game that they could have or should have won. Last year it was the Holzmeyer drop, and then he gets scored on by Austin. This time, it's the Bobby Lay throwaway. Their whole O-line had a bunch of second half throwaways, and it really felt like they let the game slip away. Do you feel like this is more of a game that Carolina won or Atlanta lost?
That's a trick. I feel like you could argue both ways. And Carolina certainly won it at the end. But I think, if you're Atlanta and you take a 3-goal lead in the first quarter, you saw not Boston, I'm sorry. You saw DC do that against Boston. They were able to keep that lead throughout the whole game. So you'd hope Atlanta could do that. But yeah, I think Carolina coming back and really, I think they had the better strategic play the rest of the way. So I'll call this a Flyers win.
All fair. We also we don't have to have. I doubt you have much to say on Minnesota absolutely dominating. DC gets the win over Boston to finish them off. What are you looking at when you see what championship weekend is going to look like moving forward? Do you feel like DC is the favorite now? And if so, who's the number one challenger?
Yeah, I think DC is the favorite. They remind me a lot of the Flyers in 2021. Right? That was the year that Carolina finally got to championship weekend. They've been knocking on the door for years, but couldn't get past Dallas. DC has been knocking on the door for years and couldn't get past New York. Right? They finally get their chance without having to beat that kind of evil empire in this case. It feels like DC has everything clicking. I cannot tell you whether they're offense or defense at what they do. They're both really, really strong. We've seen them play really well against Carolina. I think Carolina's probably the top challenger. I think it won't be so hard for them to handle Seattle, who's basically coming to championship weekend for the first time. I think Minnesota probably gives some trouble to be in the semifinal. I think we saw that last year. Minnesota knows how to show up in big moments and comes out to play. They've been to championship weekend before. DC hasn't. So I think that's probably a closer game than the other one. And I expect DC and Carolina to be the top two teams I had to pick right now. As again, before we see rosters and all that. But I think it's the year for the Breeze.
I just want to note here before we move on, one thing I noticed looking through the stats of the DC game was that their top 5 touch getters was Johnny Monks, Gus Norbaum, Rowan McDonald, Andrew Roy, and I don't have it in front of me. I forget the 5th, but only had 1 turnover between them. It was absolutely a clinic against, a pretty good Glory defense.
Sounds like DC.
Yeah, they're really good.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on the show, Alex. Looking forward to championship weekend. Maybe we'll be able to get you back on to preview or the championship weekend and maybe get some picks out of you.
That'd be great. Thanks for having me today, though.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex. Alex Rubin, our UFA beat reporter on the show here. Let's take a quick look at the matchups coming up. We got DC and Minnesota, Seattle and Carolina. I agree with Alex that DC and Carolina are going to feel like favorites going in, but I'm not going to put it past either of these other teams to pull off an upset after what we saw from Minnesota last year's championship weekend. Even though I would say they've had a disappointing regular season, maybe that doesn't matter now. Maybe they're here. And Seattle. Oh God, am I got to buy back in? We'll have to wait. We'll have to wait to find out. I'm not going to decide today. I got plenty of other decisions to make. Coming up next, we're going to talk a little bit about Elite Select Challenge, and Edward's going to get to make some picks for Charlie, which is always an entertaining exercise as we move into USA Ultimate Club. So let's take a look at Elite Select Challenge coming up this weekend. We're in the thick of bid watch. There's a lot to see at this tournament. There's an argument that this is the most important tournament of the year in that regard. Edward, where should we start? Which division do you want to start in?
The headline is the mixed division. I think we have to start there. The mixed is where I feel like there is the most in play and the most potential for absolute topsy-turvy results. Yeah, so you see there,
Yeah, mine's frozen. I hear you. Okay, sweet. I don't hear at all right now. Edward's frozen for me. Okay. Sorry, folks. We're having a little bit of technical difficulties. Welcome to live broadcasting. But I'll get started talking about the mixed division here. And as you can see, it's a great field that we have in front of us. I think Dragon Thrust is going to be many people's number 1 pick. They're the number 1 seed. They are a lot of hype coming in. They're a big name team. But I wouldn't put it past the rest of this field to offer some competition. We just saw if make the semifinals at US Open. There's a lot of preseason rally buzz with some of the pickups that they have, some big DC area names. I don't know if the Sprocket shine has worn off completely, but the field even down below that, when you get into Lawless, Noise, Shine, Towers, another team with some buzz. Love Tractor at the 15 seed seems absolutely wild to me. And of course, you got mixed up at the 5 seed. This is a very intriguing set of teams that we've got. Dragon, Rally, Mischief, and Sprocket as your top 4 seeds. We are going to be streaming basically 3 games around almost every round. So you're going to get to see a lot of Ultimate from all 3 divisions of the Elite Select Challenge, including all of the finals and many of the semifinals. A lot of that content will be available for you. So make sure that if you are not already subscribed, that you are, so you can watch those games as well as so much of the other games that we have from this year. We got a big video library from Club, so you want to get ready for the club championships coming up, you definitely have to be a subscriber to do that. So when I'm looking at this set of teams, it's a tough draw for Tower. They're a team that I'm really intrigued by, but being in the pool of Dragon Thrust maybe a tough break. But your top 2 in each pool are going to make the bracket. It's just a straight cut to 8-team bracket. So they could be in a good position to defend that, and then we'll see where they're at as they get to go up against, if they do finish second in Pool A, the winner of Pool B. I don't know what to expect from Shine. We don't have a full roster from them yet, I don't think. And, they're seated behind Storm. I think Storm probably shouldn't be totally overlooked, especially with the way that we've seen kind of inconsistencies from the team seated above them. But I think Shine also got a really tough draw with Mixtape and Mischief. Mixtape, not exactly their finest hour at US Open. I wonder about, should we be concerned about this team's ability to continue to contend for a title? We've seen so much change to their roster over the past few years. Obviously, they still have one of the best players in the division in Khalif El Salam. Where's his focus going to be? He's got national team stuff. He's obviously in the midst of a UFA season, along with some of his mixtape teammates like Mark Munoz. So they're continuing on their UFA journey. I wonder if that's going to sap some of their ability to be fully bought in or even participate at all with mixtape. So that keeps me a little bit off of getting excited about this team, especially when they went to the U.S. Open. They were 3-3, and all the teams they beat were the international teams that were at like the bottom of the pools. So they're really lacking on big time wins. They have 2 wins over Lawless this year, but most of the teams they've lost to are good. But yeah, it has not been an impressive start for Mixtape. Mischief, we talked about last week. They also actually don't have a great resume from the U.S. Open, but did make semifinals. They beat Shame. They beat Dragon Thrust. So the ceiling here is clearly really high. They're maybe a bit of a hot and cold team, but I like them to do well at this tournament. And Rally, I don't know what to expect from Rally, to be honest. They lost to Disco Club, Amp, Hybrid. Those are pretty good losses. They beat Exist. They beat Slow. They're a team that has some of the DC vets that maybe you've come to know. Jenny Faye, Zach Norbaum. They've picked up Ying Hu. There's some really exciting younger players on this team as well. But they're a team that I think we have never really seen them emerge as an elite competitive outfit. So are they ready to take that step with some of these vets, maybe kind of trying to guide the way for them? I think this weekend will be important to find out about that. But again, I'm on overlooking that Love Tractor down to the 15 seed. The roster does not look like a 15 seed at ESC. So get ready for some excitement out of the South Central. Am I back with Edward here? Okay. So we're still trying to figure out some issues with Edward right now, but we'll have him shortly. But my picks for the mixed division here, I am gonna go with my semifinals picks. I'm gonna take the top 3 seeds, so I'll take Dragon, Rally, Mischief, and then I'm gonna take Lawless as my 4th team to make semifinals. I think we're going to get a hot Mischief team here. So I'm taking them all the way to the final, but too much firepower on Dragon's side. So I'm going to have Dragon winning this one over Mischief in the final. Once we get Edward in, we'll get his picks from the mixed division as well. I think I may have him. Edward, you back with us?
Back. I think I'm back. I had a couple of technical difficulties there, but I'm back in.
I think we all did.
Keith was just spewing nonsense, I'm sure, giving you really bad picks. I think I heard him say Dragon was going to get the win. I disagree completely. I actually am really excited about Washington, D.C. Rally. They're fantastic this year. They've been battle-tested. In the game they lost against AMP, they were up something like 12-8 and went on an O-line getting broken spiral to lose the game. But that's the kind of game you'll learn from. And I believe in the talent on this team. I think they will have learned from it. I think they're going to get the win. And more importantly, I think they're going to get the win for a second time over their pool mates in Pool B, Noise. Noise are kind of low below the rankings. They had a slightly disappointing Pro Elite, but they're coming back. The Noise are motivated. They're going to get a second bid for the North Central. They do not want to be competing with Dragon Thrust for one bid.
I think we may have lost.
That wraps it up.
Edward's back.
that wraps it up for mixed. I think the next place we should move over to is men's. There's a little bit of intrigue over there as well. We've got top seeds, Austin Double Wide and Atlanta Chain Lightning. We've got Sakai, who are having a resurgent season after they missed nationals last year. RDU, who are putting together a second strong season after they made nationals last year for the first time. New York Blueprint, Virginia Vault, and then we kind of get into the weeds to figure out who might push through with Amherst Sprout, Vancouver Furious George. Mallard is lurking there. I see Ryan Osgar is on the roster, at least listed this weekend. I don't know if he's going to be playing. Garden State played decently well at Pro Elite against Pony and Goat. Can they push through to another level? And Sub-Zero kind of played shorthanded at Pro Elite, but this time they might play with all of their wind chill players and actually move further up in the USAU tournament pecking order here. So there's a lot to look at. What jumps out to you?
You're just leaving off Nationals team from last year, Dark Star, down lurking in the 11th seed. Don't sleep on Dark Star. I think they're every bit the competitor that could win Pool D over there. I am trying to decide. I think the thing that I had the most trouble with looking at this tournament was, what do I do with Double Wide and Sub-Zero? I'm like, yeah, Sub-Zero got off to a rocky start, but they were, like you mentioned, they were shorthanded. I still like the talent on this team. I like the cohesion potentially there. You got a lot of players with a lot of reps together, but you've also got Minnesota still in the UFA playoffs. Are they going to have the full lineup? Are their players going to be fully focused on this competition right in front of them? Are guys going to be trying to stay healthy? So I think that's one of the challenges on top of how they've already played. And then Double Wide, we've seen the success of Disco Club out in the mixed division. Sap some of the talent from this Double Wide team, which is still, has plenty of experience and names that your Evan Swiatex, your Jake Raddax, Chase Cunningham, Matt Armour. Like these are good players for sure, but I don't know I don't know exactly how good to think this Double Wide team is going to be. I think those are probably my biggest questions going into this tournament.
Well, let's get right into picks here. I think since you went first in mixed, I will stick my neck out and go first here in men's. In the final, I'm definitely going to take Atlanta Chain Lightning. They looked pretty good at Pro Elite anyway, even though they were missing 6 or 7 of their best players. This weekend, they're going to have Brett Holzmeyer, Austin Taylor, Jeremy Langdon, Dean Ramsey. This is going to be kind of a beast of a team, I think. We won't know necessarily till they're out on the field together, but I like everything I'm seeing. I think they're going to make the final. My second finalist, I don't know if this is a surprise or not, but I love the way they're clicking on the field right now. Give me Raleigh-Durham United. They look sharp out there. I think they have everything it takes, and Terrence Mitchell is absolutely an offensive star for them. Great player in club. And then in the final, Chain over RDU. I think this is Chain's tournament to lose.
I agree with you on that final point. I also think this is Chain's tournament to lose. Now, sure, talk about all the stuff about the hustle that we just said. So maybe that's not the best endorsement of them, but I think that this Chain team is good. They're talented, and I think they may be a little angry coming into this weekend. They may have a little catharsis to work through, and I don't know if I necessarily want to be the subject of that if I'm on the other end. I also like Sakai. I think that they're going to continue to be a solid team. The other parts are tough. I think that I like Double Wide to come out of Pool A. I think that if we didn't have the UFA playoffs about to happen, and me thinking that this Sub-Zero team is not going to be full bore for some of those guys are going to be like, yeah, I got to make sure I'm ready to go for championship weekend. Then I would be into picking Sub-Zero to make semis, but without that, I think I'm going to take Double Wide at the behest of a team like Furious. Then the other side, I don't know, man. There's something about this. I'm an RDU hater. I'll just come out and say it. I think I'm an RDU hater. I don't look at this roster and I'm not
Wow.
blown away. And I fully cop to the fact that they have continually outplayed my expectations. So I look wrong even on this limb right now, but I don't know. I still just don't feel convinced. Now that maybe not look so good considering that I'm going to pick Blueprint to make semis, and I don't know if they've been super convincing. But I do think that they're the kind of up and down team. They've played really tight, both with teams that I would say are somewhat better than them, and with teams that I would say are worse than them. So they love to be in these tight games. I think that they could take a team like RDU and beat them, by one or two in a classic Blueprint super tight game. I think this team also has some gelling to do, so I think they may come together a little bit better over the course of the year. So I'll take Blueprint in the semis, but yeah, I'm taking Chain over Sockeye in the final.
Yeah, really interesting to see which of the young players on that Sockeye team step up to be like a big play, consistent club player first. We're going to see some Cedar Hines, Daniel Chen. Who's going to step up next out of the Seattle scene? Let's move over to women's. Women's is definitely going to feel the effect of some WUC stuff. The Sixers are going to have some of their WUC players. Britta Santos is listed on the roster. I'm not sure how hard she's going to be going. Iris likewise have Penelope Robert listed. She's a star, but they aren't going to have Anushka Bodri. So it's not clear how hard Sixers and Iris are going to go, especially because they both seem to be up safe enough in the bid that they're both earning the Northeast bids. So we're going to see some teams without as many WUC stars maybe opening up in this field. We've got Portland Schwa, Utah Dark Sky. Are they going by Salt Lake Dark Sky or Utah? I think they're going by Utah Dark Sky, the kind of surprise team in the Northwest right now. Seattle Riot, Pittsburgh Parcha. This could be the tournament where they've been kind of bubbling like just beneath the quarters level all year long and kind of into last year. Is this the one where they leap up and actually get some big wins over teams in front of them? You know that Grit are going to be scrapping hard for a third Mid-Atlantic bid. Nightlock definitely need to make sure the Southwest keeps a third bid. So do Oakland LOL. And then Chicago Nemesis don't really have a nemesis in Great Lakes, but they definitely need to get good reps in if they want to compete at nationals. So that's kind of what I'm looking at in the field right now. What jumps out to you?
I'm a little curious about the down the line teams. I think I feel like we have a sense of what Sixers and Schwa, and to a degree, Iris are about. I feel a little less certain of the rest of the field. So I kind of want to see how these teams ladder out. Even a team like Pop, I think could end up performing well. Maybe they can make semifinals in a tournament like this, but I'm not that confident in that. And will we start to see a team like Parcha or Dark Sky emerge and give us some real confidence about what they can do? Obviously the Parcha roster has some interesting names on it this year. So those are teams that I'm keeping an eye on. Getting into the picks, I think my semifinalists, despite the shorthanded roster, I think the talent and the know-how of winning are going to win out for Sixers. So I got Sixers, Schwa. I think I'll take Riot. I know I've been high on Riot and often left wanting. But I think this is a field where they can be successful, and they're set up for success if Iris is going to be a little shorthanded. That'll help them in their pool play journey as well. So I'll take Riot, and I'll take Parcha in the last spot as we start to see them reap the rewards of some strong recruiting that they've done. So I'll take those four teams in the semis, and I'm going to take Schwa over Sixers in the final, mostly by the same thoughts that you were sharing at the beginning.
Interesting. I've got some Northwest love as well, but I think Sixers are going to be holding back a little. I don't know if I can see them in the final. I definitely see them in semis. But I actually have Schwa and Riot in the final. Nice youth matchup. Let me see the JJ Galleons and Ezra Waybrights of the world versus the Lauren Goodoos and Chloe Hakimis. I think this is the kind of venue where those sorts of players are going to really start to pop off. I mean, JJ Galleon was already popping off before, but yeah, let me get Riot over Schwa in the final.
Who's your fourth semifinalist? You mentioned Sixers, Schwa, Riot. Who would be your last one?
I'm really torn between Dark Sky and Parcha, just to be contrarian, and also because I like new blood at nationals. I'm rooting hard for Dark Sky to get a fourth bid for the Northwest, and I think they want to do it too. I'm taking them because they're going to beat Parcha and Nemesis in pool play and win their quarter. Give me Dark Sky.
Okay, the picks are in, and Charlie will mostly be beholden to them. Maybe we'll let Charlie make a couple of switches if he needs to. I think that's what we did last time Edward came on and made picks for him. But Charlie's also crushing me in the overall scoreboard right now, 79-63. We're also going to get some sub picks in this week from our subscribers. So we'll start adding them to the scoreboard. But we're going to take a brief break, and when we come back, we'll be talking about the newly released World Ultimate Championship seedings and pools in our first impressions. Stay with us. It's Deep Look.
Hey.
Whether you're gearing up for a TCT event or Summer League, YCC competition or Masters, Breakmark can help your team get kitted out. Their bundles get you everything your team needs, and each one comes with a free reversible and 5-panel hat. Whatever your game, Breakmark.com is the place to get your team ready this season. Deep Look. We are back, and we are talking World Ultimate Championships, the pools and the format, team list, the seating, all recently released. So now we get a full look at what we're going to be looking at when we get to Australia. And the hype is really building, Edward. I'm really excited to start actually getting into the meat of this tournament instead of just kind of the full-on speculation.
I've got goosebumps now. I love having the pools. I love having the schedule. I'm not even worried at all about the time difference. I'm not going to sleep for a week straight. It's just going to be work and life between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. and then ultimate Frisbee all night long.
Okay, well, after that cry for help from Edward, I think we can move into actually looking at the breakdown here. And since we finished with them in club, let's start with the women's division here at WUC and look at what we've said is the division that is most likely for the U.S. to not win gold, for the field to take gold. Now that we're actually seeing the pools, you got the U.S. in a pool with Japan, Australia, New Zealand, France, and China. And in Colombia, Canada, Germany, GB, Singapore, and Chinese Taipei in the other pool. Edward, do you think that this draw is this favorable for the U.S.? What are you seeing when you look at these?
It's favorable for the fans, frankly. We'll get to this later, but the other two pools are broken. Other two divisions are broken into 4 pools apiece. So you aren't going to get most of the high-level matchups until, power pools are later in the bracket. In the women's division, we are going to get incredible games that are going to challenge the 2 favorites right off the bat. So if you haven't been paying attention to World Ultimate, the favorites at this tournament are USA and Colombia in the women's division. It depends on, where you fall on who the absolute favorite is between the two of them, but they're clearly the head of the pack. However, they're not so far ahead of the pack that they can just absolutely walk or count on victories until they meet each other in the final. Colombia are going to be incredibly tested by Canada. We know Anushka Bodri is going to come up firing. She's got receivers like Britta Santos and Penelope Robert in there. We've got Chewy. Catherine Menzies is just absolutely a metronome of a cutter. And beyond that, we have a German team that is as explosive as any team beneath the US and Colombian sides. That's where you're going to get Lev Kovalchuk launching ridiculous angled backhand hucks from anywhere she wants on the field, where you're going to get Anna Gerner, using every last ounce of muscle she has to lay out, to save a reset and keep a possession going. You've got Nikki Preen and Charlotta Shaw. Those are really good players on really good teams that have international experience to challenge Colombia. And I think we see the same thing in Pool A. It's been a long time, since we've seen the full-on country WUC. It's been 8 years. But every indication is that the Japan women's side and the Australian women's side are not far off the US mark. I mean, Australia played great at the World Games a couple years ago. That was largely because of not only established players like Kat Phillips, but because of the young players, Sally Yu, Caro Ma, Liv Carr. Those are all players in this field right now who could do damage. Eva Weatherall played so well for the ellipsis side that played well at the WCC, the club championships a couple years ago. I think there is legitimately drama in both of these pools for the top seeds, and I cannot wait to see it.
I agree. I mean, I think that the U.S. women's team probably has the toughest challenger in Colombia. I mean, it's the only division I think where you have a really cogent argument that the U.S. isn't the favorite necessarily. I don't really think there's much of a discussion for that in any other division, and I think that there's a clear discussion for that in the women's division. But they may have the next best team after that too. I mean, I think that this German team, if everything comes together, could be really scary. And that's not discounting, Canada and Japan. But I think that this division has some really interesting potential semifinal matchups. And it could really come down to how teams end up getting matched up when we get further into the bracket. Most exciting matchup that you see in these pool play. One game. You get one game.
Australia, United States.
Interesting. I know based on what I just said, it should be Colombia, Germany, but I actually think I want to see Canada, Germany more, just because I feel like Canada is such a good standard setter. Like they're going to be a great measuring stick for how good Germany could be. If Germany struggles in that game, I think you're going to worry. But if they come out and they play really well, they beat Canada, I think you could get a little scared. I wonder if we're going to see in general a wake up call in the U.S. But I wonder if in particular the women's division, and maybe we'll feel some extra sense of urgency that we can't just show up anymore. Like that's not good enough. But they know the stakes and they also know the quality of the competition. So I think in the women's division you may see that highest sense of urgency after what we saw at the Junior World Championships. And what we've seen in the past in the women's division, I think it's been the division that's had the least international success, which is like a crazy bar when it's gold medals every time. But there's a question in the chat from TD: how much does France, with their WJUC performance, transfer to France at WUC? I think it's a good sign, but I wouldn't necessarily expect it to be super 1-to-1. There are some players who are going to cross over, and so those players, I think you can be excited about what they can bring to the table. I think a lot of them are actually in the mixed division, but I do think that France is going to be competitive, but I wouldn't necessarily ascribe the same level of expectation to their senior team that we have from their junior teams and their tremendous performance at WJUC.
I actually want to jump in here just to say that, I don't think we're going to see it in this division, but I do think we are going to see a significant impact in the mixed division. Camille Blanc is a tremendous player. She was kind of on autopilot in WJUC. She was kind of the almost cutter on rails, basically, just making every great cut, making every great throw. Didn't have to work that hard, and she'll be a force in mixed. Here in the women's, even outside of the top three, you see France down there as the 5th seed in Pool A. I mean, Aline Mondiot is a world-class handler, has been for years. And if she is steadying that ship, they could be competitive. I don't think they're going to challenge the US, but they could make somebody like Australia or Japan sweat. And then you see Great Britain there in Pool B. When Molly Wedge goes off, there's no containing her whatsoever. So yeah, there's even chance for drama beyond the top 6. I love it.
Yeah, let's just ride that wave right over to the mixed division, and get a clear sense of what we're working with, because I do think that France is compelling in a division where there's some really interesting European teams in the mix. You got USA; they're going to be the number 1 team going into it, and at the top of the pool, it's hard to even say that the pools are seeded. I'll just say who's in some of these pools. In the U.S. is a pool with Japan. It's probably their top competition of each of their 5-team pools. Australia and Italy, as well as New Zealand, who I feel like is stapled to Australia in a bunch of these pools. Then in Pool C, you got Canada, GB, and Germany. And in Pool D, you've got France and Colombia. And I do wonder, I feel like we, as an audience, we just don't know Singapore, but they keep playing well at some of these U24s, now WJUC. We may need to put a tab on Singapore for where they're going to be. Maybe it's not this year, but maybe next WC we're going to be looking at them as a team that could contend for semis. Maybe they'll surprise me this year, because I don't know if anybody knows what to expect from them, but they're not a team I'm super familiar with. But the results are pretty noticeable. When you look at these pools, Edward, what do you think is going to be the most hotly contested of them?
Well, I think you keyed in on it when you were discussing Singapore in Pool D. When I look at Pool D, I see France mixed, who I actually expect to win the pool and contend for a medal. I think they're one of the strongest teams here, but they're in a pool with, I think, probably the 2 most underrated potential medal contenders in the field in Colombia and Singapore. Both of those teams have a lot of experience in mixed. Colombia has a very healthy mixed club scene. I got to witness it live at the Pan American Ultimate Championships last December, and they are absolutely going to come up firing against both France and Singapore. And Singapore, like you said, play a ton together, travel well internationally, show up well internationally at every level in the mixed division. I'm not sure France, even though I have high expectations for them, I'm not sure they can make it through Pool D unscathed. And they might not really turn it on until power pools after maybe a wake-up call. The other pool I have my eye on is the top of mixed Pool B. For my money, Australia are definitely the favorites to take it. However, Italy are not sending a men's team, or an open division team, excuse me. They're not sending a women's team, and they've kind of thrown all their eggs into the basket of the mixed team. So you'll see, Barsazzi and Scazzieri, all the players that you've seen excel a lot of the time in single gender scenarios are all together on that mixed team. They played, I can't remember if it was warm up or London Invite, where they played together as a unit, and it seemed like they hadn't quite found their stride yet. But if they can hit it, they could challenge Australia and indeed challenge for a medal. So I'm curious at that top of mixed Pool B matchup to see who actually comes out on top. It's like an early indicator of who's in the hunt.
That's the one to watch for me, is Australia and Italy. I've advocated for somebody to do what Italy's doing for a long time. I'm very curious to see how it works out. I feel like I'm invested in it because it's something that I've said would be a potentially winning strategy. Stop trying to compete in 2 divisions at once. Concentrate all your talent into your mixed division team, and see if you can try and top all the US that way. And so I'm very curious to see how it actually works out. I think Australia is a pretty good team to go up against to compare yourself. I feel like France is in a pretty strong position in Pool D. I definitely am open to the idea that we're going to be surprised by some of these lower seeded teams, especially in the mixed division, where I feel like that's been a trend in other international competition. So I think you could be right about France, but I also think that they have a lot of class to that team. They're pretty seasoned. And some of the young players they have are also really exciting. So I like France, but I think the big matchup to me is Australia and Italy up in Pool B. Why don't we move over to the Open division and take a look at our pools there? We'll do a full breakdown. I'm sure Charlie will want to get his word in. We'll do a full breakdown next week and make our picks. I've already been thinking about my picks. They're hard, but this is the setup for the Open division. You've got the U.S. with GB, Austria, and Hong Kong. And then Pool B, Japan, Belgium, and France with China. Pool D, Canada and Colombia and Italy with Chinese Taipei. And Pool C, Australia, Germany, and then again New Zealand and Singapore. Why do they do this to New Zealand and Australia? Why do they have to play each other in every division? It feels like. Okay. Again, you look at these pools. I think to me that maybe it's not so clear. What do you think is the toughest pool? I feel like it was clear when I first looked at it, but maybe I'm second guessing myself.
I'm not sure I have an opinion on what the toughest pool is. I think I'm really excited for the top of pool matches in every single one of these pools. I mean, the U.S. in the Open division are going to be the favorites, but Great Britain, I think, actually have the talent and the kind of composition. It's a big team that loves to put the disc deep to their big athletes. I think they can challenge them a lot better than maybe some of the other Open division teams will. So it'll be a good test for the U.S. in pool play. And I feel like every other top match is kind of a pick'em. I'm not sure who I think is going to win between Japan and Belgium. Those are enormously strong countries in the Open division. Australia and Germany, same thing. Two hugely strong countries in the Open division. Canada, I think, have shown that they are going to be one of the favorites for a silver or bronze medal here. And Colombia, again here in Open, probably the most underrated team in the bunch. So I'm not sure I have a most difficult. What do you think, Keith?
To me, I think I have to go with Pool B. I feel like Italy and Colombia might be missing a little bit. And that's true for France. I think a lot of their top Open players are on the mixed team, but I do think that they'll still be a pretty tough opponent with Elliot Bonet leading the charge for this squad. I do think that that's probably the toughest pool, but I think this is the division where we're like least likely to see a lot of early upsets. That's the sense that I get from looking at the two sets of pools. We're going to talk about this in sub bonus. I think we're going to talk about the players we're really hyped to see at WUC. But am I wrong? Am I missing Andres Ramirez from Colombia? Or is he?
Yeah, you are.
I feel like
he was listed as an alternate. He's like a legend in Colombia and Ultimate, but no, we're getting we're not going to get Andres Ramirez. That's right.
Oh my gosh. What's the point? Why are we even doing this then? I love watching that guy play. I know Cantor is your guy.
Cantor is my favorite player in the whole world.
I know this. I mean, I don't feel quite as strongly about Rama, but like not by much. Like I do feel pretty strongly, and it's hugely disappointing. I'm not gonna get to watch him play. Man, and he's also extremely talented. Big loss for Colombia to not have him, I think. I guess I was.
Wait, real quick before we move on, though, Keith. You said you weren't going to see a lot of upsets. What would you call it if Germany beats Australia, or if Belgium beats Japan, or vice versa? Are those upsets, or are those just two even matches?
I think that. I mean, maybe I'm underselling Germany. They do have, Budenmuller and Nico Mueller and Doscher and Schlor. They're definitely some guys on this team. So maybe I'm underselling them and feeling like Australia was a clear favorite. But I feel like Australia and Belgium are probably are more than a goal favorite in their respective matchups. So I would say those are upsets. Maybe I'm underselling Germany, but I think Belgium should be the favorite coming in against Japan. I mean, they look really good. I'll be curious to get Charlie's take on how he feels like these teams stack up against each other. And then we get into the actual action. I mean, we're gonna have a ton streaming from WUC. We're just about to put out the schedule. So we're putting like the final touches on it. But basically, we got every country, every division is going to get streamed, and that's before we even get into the depths of bracket play. You're going to get all the best games. We're going to have, if you're a fan of the US, which I imagine a lot of our audience is, we're going to have a lot of US and Canadian teams on. So you want to be sure, if you are not already subscribed, this is the time. If you haven't done all access, this upgrade for this month, go ahead and make your choice. And if you're not sure if you want to do that, go ahead and check out our team packs, our WUC event packs. These are going to be your best way to take in the event, get access to all the different games that we're going to have, because we are going to have a lot of games. I mean, especially if you're not going to be in that time zone, you got to wake up and come back and watch them on demand. Go ahead and get some coffee and watch them in the morning. Or if you can manage to get up, then you can join in on the fun. We'll probably have some big chatter going on in the Discord. You can check out the link in our bio for more on how to subscribe for the event pack, or to get a subscription for the wider Ultiworld site as well. Edward, are you hyped for the World Ultimate Championships? I mean, we're coming right off of Olympic fever. So the Olympics have just wrapped up. It's like they were setting it up for us. They're teeing it up.
Yeah, I mean, they teed it up, and WUC is going to knock it 400 yards in a straight line, Happy Gilmore style. The quarters of WUC in all three divisions are going to be some of the best Ultimate you ever see in your life. Players have been waiting 8 years for this. And so, yeah, get the event pack and make sure you get familiar with all the players before it all really starts to go down in power pools and quarters, because it's going to be worth it. This is going to be a tremendous tournament.
All right, you can check out the link in the description, the episode, to find out more about how to subscribe, so you can watch everything going on and share the good word about the event pack, so that people who maybe have not been subscribers to Ultiworld can go ahead and check out what's going to be a really tremendous celebration of Ultimate across the world. And again, once Charlie is back next week, we're going to get our picks in. Edward, just maybe we'll sneak him in as a subscriber, so he can get some picks in, because I know he's got opinions. I know he's got some takes, and they're going to be spicy. I've already been thinking about my picks. I think I'm not going to end up picking a USA sweep, though. If I had to today, that might be where I'm at. So stay tuned for more on that. We are going to hit our question of the week next. So want to jump to that. That comes in fact, from one of our international experts, one of the folks who I count on to help be informed about international Ultimate, Ravi Vasudevan. And his question: who has the best defense in each of the club divisions in the US? Just to be clear, we're talking USA Ultimate Club division. Who has the best defense in each division? Which team?
Do you want me to go first? We going by division, or just by us?
Hit me with what you got. We can bounce back and forth if you want.
All right. Well, let's start in the women's division, because this one I think was the hardest for me. We see always a great team-wide defensive scheme from Brute Squad, where everybody's working together, and I think they might actually have the best individual defender this year in Fleur Coulartz, who every time I watch her play, I just caught up on the U.S. Open film. And yeah, they got destroyed, but Fleur looked like she was a mile beyond everybody else on the field. That being said, the speed and focus of Fury's defense across every line they throw out there, I think gives them the best defense again this year. It's probably every other year that they can claim they have the best defense in the country, and I'm seeing it again. You get Ali Suji, you get Anna Thompson, Shayla Harris. I don't see how anybody can compete with the full roster of defenders that Fury can throw at you.
It's wild that you could like take away Opie and Amel from that team, and somehow their defense is still outstanding.
It's so good.
I think they're a great answer to me. if like it's universe point and you're just like taking the best 7 players to go out there and play a defensive point, I think I would say Molly Brown. But if you were saying like the like consistent defensive unit for a team, to me it's Scandal versus Fury for that honor. I love some of the defenders on the Scandal team. Even if you give them some grace to cross over someone like Claire Trope, I mean, they just have a lot of players who can go out and play great defense and are kind of like nose to the grindstone kind of players. With your Amanda Murphy's or your Laura Oldershaw or Allie Wallace. But yeah, I think I might say Fury right now, but I think it's close enough that this could change. What division you want to go to next? Who are you feeling?
Men's division. This is the one I have the strongest opinion about, like the slam dunk. And you and Charlie were kind of giving me grief for it on the last deep look, so I want to have my word in. You were calling it a big brain move of me to celebrate Truck Stop's defense over their offense. But this is a team where they not only had the top 2 finishers on last year's defensive podium in Troy Holland and AJ Merriman, they also have a legendary bulldog of a defender in Charlie McCutcheon. They've got absolute firecracker in Jasper Tom, who can get a block on anybody in the reset space. Alexander Fall is playing some of the best defense I've ever seen him play. Musa Ja is always right there. And we talked about finishing top 2 on the podium. We actually had a tie for third and had to go to a tie break. It was only by a matter of like 1 vote that Thomas Edmonds wasn't also on our defensive podium for a full DC sweep. That defense is out of this world good.
I would say that like if we had to stop it all right now and vote for Pody, like I think Thomas Edmonds might be in my top 3, and you just don't do that on D lines. You don't compete for Pody on the D line. But he's so good after the turn 2, and so yeah, I think I'd have to go with DC2. I do like the potential for Bravo. I do like where they could be at. So I want to recognize that. But right now it's got to be DC. I mean, they're the talent's lights out. Okay, you ready to spin the wheel in the mixed division?
Well, before we get there, just one quick note on men's. We haven't seen them with all of their big defenders yet, but Chain might actually put themselves in the conversation this year once they get Holzmeyer, Langley, Ramsey in with everybody else. Those guys can really mess your offense up. But yeah, let's go mixed.
Oh man. Yeah. This is
I'm going classic here. Classic defensive team, a team that sometimes looks like they've completely forgotten themselves on offense, but it doesn't matter because they are always going to be hand in pocket, ready to get the disc back. Minneapolis Dragon Thrust. I mean, you get Sarah Mextroth, you get James Pollard. I know he's more of an O-line guy right now. They got bruisers. They're going to get the disc a million times. They might give it back 1,000,001 times in any given game. You don't know, but they're going to get their hands on the disc. That team gets blocks.
It's wild. Like even with all of that preface, I still had no idea which team you were going to say when it came down to it. So I didn't know. I think I'm going to go Shame here. They're so athletic. They're just so big and fast on defense with so many different players who can provide that element for the team that I think I'm going to go with them. But like, yeah, I mean, this is a big toss up. Like, I think you could make a case for AMP, for BFG. I know Connor Belfield's on the O-line, but Lucas Ambrose has been really fantastic for them. And when they do cross over some of those O-line players to defense, I think that BFG's defense can be right up there when you're talking about having Sage Jersey out there on defense or Leah Barron Simmons. Like that can make a big difference for them too. So I think there's a clear case to be made for some other teams in mixed division.
What do you think of hybrid with Skunk, Nathan Champeau, Rachel Mast, and Sarah Nitz on that team.
That's another great shout. And Adam Stalberg, I know, is a key defender for them too. I think that they're definitely another team that I keep saying that I feel like they and Shame share a lot in common, and I think the incredible athleticism they possess across the team, it does lend some credence to that as far as like their defensive acumen as well, especially when they have some crossovers and get someone like Sarah Nitz over onto the defense.
My last thought here, and we haven't seen him much.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Is Austin Disco Club? They might actually have two of the best individual defenders in the mixed division in Kyle Hinkie, if he's playing defense, and Logue Warren. So, and that's even without using their hats.
which you're not allowed to do. I don't know if anybody's talked to Daniel Walsh recently, but you cannot, in fact, do that. So that's going to wrap it up for this week's show. Make sure if you haven't hit the thumbs up button on YouTube, please do. Or if you're listening on the podcast, if you can rate and review us wherever you get your podcast, it helps a ton for us to cut through the noise out there. So we appreciate all the support. And for our subscribers, we're going to be doing an Out the Back episode. Edward and I, again, are going to be talking about some of the players that we're excited to see at the World Ultimate Club Championships. Maybe we're just talking about some players we've been hyped on lately. So join us for that in the Discord. We'll be up to that in just a moment. Thank you for joining us. This is Deep Look. Catch you next week.
Fury can't come back against Riot in a timed game. Think about it.